All right, hey guys, it is time for another video, and tonight I'm going to be talking a little bit louder. Yesterday, if you're wondering about some of the videos, first off, I was recording late at night, so I had to keep my voice somewhat down for neighbor concerns, and obviously not wanting to get kicked out of where I live for breaking rules, or at least not too much. So anyway, here we are. We're going to be talking about Viga again, and also the blanket, Cozy Umbra. Welcome to Cozy videos. Anyway, so Viga, I did my initial tests yesterday, and that was pre-Wotv calc numbers coming out. We do now have those Wotv calc numbers, so we're going to be taking a look at that and seeing if it changed my overall impression of Viga. There's also Peachin's video, which I also took a look at, where he basically also fights dark elemental characters. And I think overall, most of the community is pretty decided about certain things to do with this one. So first off, one of the mistakes that I made on this character was to do with his TMR. Now, his TMR actually is a Grant's Protect. We got that right. But the thing that it actually, I was right that it does affect Berserk. I thought it casted Berserk on the actual unit, but instead it increases the chance of Berserk activating. Now, kind of an interesting TMR for both Fire Elemental and Thunder Elemental properties, since those seem to be the two elements where Berserk is the most prominent. There are other potential areas where Berserk might pop up into the future. So this TMR is at least interesting because it does work for at least a couple of units that, off the top of my head, one of them being UR Mont, who, you know, his limit burst does become more powerful because of this, and because of his 140 as well. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's enough to actually get there, but the much higher chance of Berserk activating off of this is pretty impressive, and the TMR is better than I originally thought it was, but it's only for very, very specific characters. Now, Viga is a interesting Thunder Elemental character. His Master ability does give him Lightning Attack up and Acquired AP up, and his Dream Enhancement is 15% HP and single target resistance, which kind of informs a little bit more of some of the numbers that we were seeing in initial tests. By the way, in this video, there will not be any more tests yet because the friend unit hasn't refreshed. I don't know why that rule still even exists anymore. In this game. Friend units, especially the trial unit, should just be accessible as many times as you want. Too critical? I don't know. Anyway, looking at his kit, this is something that I was very interested in. Limit Burst dispels all buffs, haste, physical and magical damage buffs as well for the target, which all of that is pretty good. It has a 67% chance to inflict Berserk, which I think even if you ran this guy at about 70% faith, you probably have a pretty accurate Berserk status effect, even without any extra thing. So I think this is quite strong for a Limit Burst, and it is AoE, and honestly, we're going to talk about survivability might not be an issue. Dragoon does bring the chance of a 42% attack while Protect is in effect, and like we said, TMR can do that as well, which is pretty cool. You also get 100% reaction block rate with Dragoon, so there is some real merit. I think that the movement increase for him might be okay. Decreased bravery and his other attacks probably aren't really that important, so if you disable that and only ran the top two abilities, I think you'd be quite well off for it. However, this is a unit that unfortunately maybe has a little bit of burden of wealth, because Urel gives him a bunch of damage abilities. Now, these are fist-based abilities, which aren't super interesting, but it does have the 60% attack increase for himself, as well as for the cost of decreasing his spirit. Now, he doesn't have too much spirit to begin with, And from the equipment we've seen on the friend unit, he wasn't built with that. So mages could be particularly very scary for him to go up against. Now he does have some magic resistance, so he doesn't feel that frail versus mages, but especially if you're going to run Yrel, Yrel's job as his sub, you might be this. I mean, this is a really good buff for him, for an attacker as well. I'm just like worried a little bit about like leaving yourself way too open for mage teams. Good on the offense, probably not good on defense, because he feels fairly counterable if you know he's in the party and you have a bunch of mages. Might want to be careful. And Charlotte hasn't really been upgraded in a while, so her being meta, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Big thing is Yrel does give chance to ignore fatal damage to himself. That's right, he gives him guts, and that's pretty damn good. Like, it's just pretty damn good, because we've already talked about, he has revive, he has protect, he has barrier, he has a lot of survivability. As a matter of fact, I would say that this is probably the most overcranked character I've seen in the entire game for survivability, next to Flag Glassy. And just for the record, Flag Glassy is still better, but not by much. If you ran this as a sub job, I mean, you have access to a really big attack buff, and basically this like anti-fatal damage. And it's interesting, like, do you want this where you're getting the bonus from potentially running protect? I honestly think this is pretty good to run, because this is a lot of survivability for physical attacks. This is a chance to just ignore fatal damage. Now, of course, there are ways of getting through this and canceling this kind of protection out, and it is only a single cast. A lot of units with this kind of effect lately have been getting at least double casts, so it's a little bit that. And then we just have the problem of AI, where honestly, if you look at the buffs he can be running, there's a lot of different stuff that his AI kind of needs to prioritize, and it's a question of how much he'll be able to do before actually getting into battle. I think that it might be just a little bit too much, but it's also kind of okay. The trade-off for the sub job seems totally reasonable, as you're losing an AoE that decreases agility. Sorry, my ears are kind of plugged for some reason right now. But I don't think that's worth necessarily running. Now, the upgrade to his skill and increase max HP and restore that HP by 40% is pretty substantial, and it might actually just be worth another consideration, because I mean, are you really going to be running all of these? No, you're going to have to pick and choose here. There are three options, basically: the HP route, the Immortal Spirit / Guts / Bravery, sorry, it's not Bravery, or the Protect route, and all three are interesting in different aspects. Viga basically has a lot of flexibility in what you'll want to be running for a sub job, depending on the experience that you're going for. Now, taking a look at his main job as a chance to inflict paralysis, which ain't bad. At least that's lightning themed to me. His physical damage barrier is 70%. Now, this is great. This is what I would expect really want to see from a physical barrier on most units that come out nowadays. However, that being said, again, it's physical only, it's not magical, and there are barrier cancelers out there, so be careful. Thankfully, though, Viga has enough HP that I don't feel too worried about it. 100% hit chance on one of his damage attacks that also gets an increased modifier by a total of 75%. This one, when maxed out, like here, you're looking at it even more when it gets upgraded. So it's a 200% with a 25 defense, right? Which is really good for a physical attacker. But then it's 100% hit chance, and it's increasing the mod 37% for each time, or 37.5 to a max of 75. So 275 mod, as we saw yesterday in the testing, is very strong. Increasing slash attack, decreasing CT is fine, 20%. Magic resistance and strike resistance. I think this is quite good because it's two maybe blind spots for him. And it does give him auto revive, which is important. And his HP at 9,000 should give him a fairly decent revive, but it really is going to be like, hopefully another unit doesn't hit him first, as always is the case, or it doesn't get canceled out. Now we can cancel auto revive, and getting him into 140 will also give him 100% hit chance on this ability. That's really good. So just looking at the jobs before we talk about supports and how you build this unit, whatever, I'd say that this unit is quite flexible and has a lot of survivability. Like, this really is one of the most survivable and really good offensive units in a while. Like, even when I was thinking earlier about just how much I don't kind of like certain things in his kit, like, it's like, oh, his main job, it doesn't have an attack buff. Well, the URL martial artist kind of job does have it, so that's okay. You do kind of have to trade off some stuff. I mean, Dragoon, interestingly enough, going back up, let's talk about the counters, because his main counter is a counter to all damage at 80% mod, which isn't bad and has some good range on it. A 165 on here, and 100% hit chance that absorbs 30% of the damage. So it's pretty good. Newer units can just block this completely, and I absolutely think it's more valuable than the chance of physical evade, because he is so strong physically, and it's better than this absorbing 50% just for a 20% chance. Like, this is a really, really good counter ability. The chance to counter all damage up to 80% with a 165 mod that's 100% accurate is really good. Basically reaction block, or he is going to be a pain in the ass to deal with. He's good. Support skills, I mean, this one I think you're always running because it's slash attack, defense, and attack. Attack and defense penetration here feels pretty good. And agility and move is also potentially interesting, as well as healing power. Like, Dragoon did end up being really nice for his kit, because his counter effectively heals him and has a good chance to activate if you don't have reaction block. Yes, there are reaction block sources, but the opponent's not always going to have it. And if that's the case, you're just making him tankier and potentially healier, which is pretty good. Agility and move is good for trying to close the gap. And yeah, these offensive ones are just generally good for making him stronger. If anything, Viga feels like he suffers from maybe too many options. It might be just too much of a good thing here, because there's just so many ways and so much here that you can do. I think he is incredibly strong. And even one of his weaker points, which is magic resistance, I mean, this will always be an ability that you want to cast because it gives re-raise, and it's just one of his main things. But it also gives him magic resistance and allows him to be really pretty good even into his worst damage type, like his worst defensive option, which is magic. I think that he has the power of Dispel and Berserk. He's probably one of the more versatile units we've seen in over a year. And I think he also has some really interesting endurance buffs. He has a trust mastery that synergizes well with himself and potentially any future Berserk units. So do I think he's a must pull? And do I think that he is going to flat out replace other Thunder units, and especially a really tanky Thundercom? Maybe. Him plus Lightning with 140 I think is actually just good enough on its own. And you could do whatever you want for the third character, and you really would be pretty sure. The status effect is just nasty and isn't one of the things that he's particularly good at. The biggest weakness that I can see in this guy is shooting and earth shooting, and specifically that kind of Rurugia would have a really big advantage. If you just kill him before he remotely gets close and you have double hits, pretty good. I mean, like, essentially this doesn't really change into water matchup because he was already strong, and I don't think this will change anything into earth. However, as Sadali has proven, a good status effect can actually really handily change the flow of battle in the favor of the disadvantageous elements, such as charm, for example. So that is important. With the other elements, I think he's very, very competitive against basically everything that is currently meta on AP right now. I don't think he replaces just the flat out strongest character in the game right now, but he's definitely up there in the pedigree of some of the strongest characters in the game. And that's interesting. That's really good. Now, with that being said, let's take just a brief moment to consider the future. Future will be 2 mage essentially characters, because we know that Rafu from early mission maps seems to be more magic based than physical based, and I think she will continue to be a mage. As for the last Void character, who is probably going to be a light elemental to balance out Rafu coming from dark, and the fact that Lucio, the very first character, was basically a freebie, well, I'm expecting the last Void character to be light element 100%. Now, both of those characters may have something that really strongly counters this unit without even being his worst element kind of thing. And I think that we've seen a lot of physical based units, so I think we're going to see some mages in the future. However, I think that range characters will generally keep this guy in check. While he does have barriers and everything, range is still quite strong. So yeah, my overall impressions is this is a definite win for the lightning element, and I think for anybody who's a thunder elemental aficionado, save for this guy because you won't regret it. Only time will tell. I think his AI might be a little bit overburdened with just too many choices, but not really many negatives to comment on here. So thanks so much for watching. Take care, and see you next time.